There are moments in a woman's life when everything seems calm on the outside, yet inside her spirit there is a rumble she cannot ignore. This stirring doesn't come from chaos or disorder, but from a divine restlessness that refuses to let her settle. It's as though the life she once celebrated no longer satisfies her soul. The spaces that used to bring her comfort now feel unfamiliar. The routines she once found joy in begin to feel mundane. She senses that something is shifting, though she cannot yet articulate what. This is not confusion. This is not a lack of gratitude. It is the voice of God beckoning her into a new dimension. This restlessness is sacred. It is often the first sign that heaven is preparing to release something significant into her life. When God is about to do something extraordinary through a woman, He disturbs the familiar. He creates holy tension within her spirit so that she will not become too comfortable with what was only meant to be temporary. Divine restlessness becomes the language of transition. It whispers to her in the middle of her daily routines, nudging her to look deeper, to ask questions she once avoided, to examine her spiritual posture. Her spirit begins to crave more clarity, more purpose, more of God. She is no longer satisfied with shallow water. She begins to hunger for the deep. She starts to notice that conversations that once entertained her now feel draining. Her time becomes more sacred. Her soul becomes more selective. She doesn't fully understand what she's preparing for, but something within her is convinced that what's coming requires a different version of her. The beauty of divine restlessness is that it awakens her to the presence of God in ways she hadn't encountered before. It's in the restlessness that she begins to lean in. She begins to pray not just out of habit, but out of hunger. Her quiet moments with God become more frequent, more honest, more intense. She stops treating God like a routine and starts engaging Him like a lifeline. And this shift is prophetic. God uses the discomfort to draw her closer to His voice. He doesn't reveal the full picture, but He makes her aware that something is stirred in the spiritual realm. Her heart begins to break for things it once ignored. She becomes sensitive to injustice, to calling, to destiny. Her discernment sharpens. She starts to see life differently, not through the lens of survival, but through the lens of stewardship. She is carrying something in her spirit, though it has not yet manifested. In this season, divine restlessness feels like both a burden and a gift. She cannot explain to others why she's no longer content with what once thrilled her. People may think she's changed, and she has, not because she's chasing something fleeting, but because something eternal is chasing her. God is arresting her spirit so that He can align her steps. This restlessness removes her from cycles. It wakes her up from distractions. It gives her eyes to see what no longer fits and courage to release what is too small for where she's going. Her spirit begins to grieve what she once prayed for because she now realizes that God is calling her beyond what she thought was the finish line. He's introducing her to a new level of identity, authority, and vision. This restlessness is also an invitation into divine obedience. God doesn't always show her where He's taking her, but He shows her what to release. And it's in the releasing that trust is built. She doesn't always have answers, but she has instructions. The restlessness is teaching her that peace is not found in predictability, but in presence. The presence of God becomes her anchor when everything else feels uncertain. She begins to walk by faith in new ways. Not because she wants to, but because she must. The old patterns won't work in this new season. The old language doesn't speak to where she's going. God is renewing her mind through the discomfort. He is reintroducing her to herself, the version of her He saw before the world gave her labels. She may find herself waking up at unusual hours, feeling prompted to pray, to write, to fast, to weep. These are not random moments. They are divine appointments. The restlessness won't let her ignore the stirring. It becomes the fire that pushes her to birth something in the spirit before it shows up in the natural. She becomes a woman in travail, not with physical labor, but with spiritual urgency. Her soul knows what her mind has yet to comprehend. She is on the brink of something God-sized, and the restlessness becomes her midwife, guiding her through the contractions of purpose. As she begins to embrace this divine discontentment, she realizes that it is not about what is missing, but about what is coming. God is not punishing her. He is promoting her. But the promotion begins in the spirit. It starts with capacity. It starts with the willingness to move when nothing is wrong, to transition when nothing is broken, to grow when everything feels stable. This level of obedience is not taught. It's birthed in the fire of restlessness. She starts to see obstacles as preparation and silence as instruction. The wilderness becomes her teacher, and the unknown becomes sacred ground. She no longer fears letting go because she has tasted what it means to be led. She becomes attached to outcomes and more attached to obedience. In this space of divine restlessness, God begins to reveal pieces of her assignment. Not all at once, but just enough to fuel her faith. She may receive prophetic dreams, unexpected encounters, or unusual favor. These are breadcrumbs that confirm she is walking the right path. But the clarity doesn't cancel the restlessness. It partners with it. She continues to feel stretched, pulled, expanded. And that expansion is making room for the blessing she cannot yet see. The restlessness trains her to move with God, not ahead of him. It teaches her to trust the detours, to honor the process, and to find strength in surrender. There is something sacred about a woman who learns to discern the voice of divine restlessness. She doesn't run from it. She doesn't numb it. She leans into it. She allows it to shape her character, sharpen her focus, and silence her fears. This is how God prepares her for more, not through noise, but through a whisper, not through chows, but through a stirring. And in that stirring, she begins to transform, not outwardly first, but inwardly. Her identity shifts, her priorities change, her spirit aligns with heaven's rhythm. And though she may not know the exact moment the blessing will arrive, her soul knows she is reading for it. When God is preparing to elevate a woman, he does not only deal with her desires, he deals with her surroundings. There is a divine purification that takes place both internally and externally. She begins to notice that things which once held her attention no longer speak to her spirit. The conversations she used to enjoy now feel shallow. The environments that once made her feel seen now feel too small for the woman she's becoming. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. God is purifying her environment to reflect the new weight of glory that she is about to carry. The shift doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. A friend who was once central to her life becomes distant. A door she once prayed for unexpectedly closes. A passion she pursued for years begins to fade. These are not coincidences. They are divine edits. God is removing what no longer serves the assignment attached to her next season. As this purification unfolds, the woman may feel confusion at first. She may wonder why people are leaving, why she feels alone, but why her energy is shifting. But what looks like loss is actually alignment. God is doing something strategic. He's clearing the room of voices that can't discern the new frequency she's stepping into. It is not that the people were bad. It is that their purpose in her life has reached its completion. Just as certain garments no longer fit when a person grows, certain relationships no longer fit when a woman evolves. God honors those relationships by releasing them with grace. He creates space for divine connections, people who will not be intimidated by her calling, but will nurture it, protect it, pray for it. These are covenant relationships, not convenience-based friendships. They are people who recognize her anointing even when she forgets it. They are people who see her not just in her current state, but in her prophetic potential. This purification doesn't stop with relationships. It moves into her daily choices. She begins to examine what she consumes spiritually, emotionally, and even physically. The music she once listened to now feels like noise. The shows she watched now feel like distractions. The habits she tolerated are now intolerable. God is detoxing her spirit to make space for clarity. He is renewing her mind so that she can perceive his will with fresh eyes. She starts waking up earlier, praying with deeper conviction, fasting not because it's a spiritual obligation, but because it's a sacred craving. Her appetite is changing because her spirit is being prepared for something holy. She can no longer function on spiritual crumbs. She wants depth. She wants purity, she wants power, and that desire is God-given. As her inner world begins to shift, so does her external world. Sometimes the change comes through doors closing, opportunities that seem promising suddenly fall through. Platforms that once welcomed her now feel resistant. She may feel tempted to chase what's being removed, but her spirit stops her. There's a knowing that what's leaving is not rejection, it's preservation. God is not just protecting her heart, he's protecting her purpose. Every door that closes is a door God no longer wants her to walk through. It doesn't matter if it looked good, sounded good, or made sense. If it's not God's will, he will not let it prosper. This is part of the purification. Is God teaching her not to measure her future by familiar metrics? He's teaching her to trust his no as much as she trusts his yes. As the purification process deepens, the woman may find herself spending more time alone, not in isolation, but in consecration. God begins to speak louder in the silence. The alone time is not punishment, it is preparation. In the quiet, he begins to reveal things she never saw before. He exposes subtle compromises. He brings buried wounds to the surface. He shines light on hidden motives. This is not to shame her, but to purify her from within. Her heart becomes the altar. Her tears become the offering. God is not just concerned with what she does. He is concerned with who she is becoming. And the weight of the blessing requires a pure vessel, not a perfect one, but a surrendered one. This process can feel intense. At times, she may question what's happening. She may even long for the old rhythms of her life, but God continues to confirm his hand in the process. He sends small signs, divine encounters, prophetic reminders that she is on the right path. Even in the discomfort, she senses peace. Even in the stripping away, she feels covered. This peace is supernatural. It is not tied to circumstance. It is the evidence that God is with her in the purification. She is not walking through it alone. Heaven is invested in her refinement. As she continues in this season, she becomes more discerning. Her no becomes stronger. Her yes becomes intentional. She no longer compromises to maintain connections. She no longer tolerates what threatens her peace. She realizes that her environment is not just about what's around her, it's about what's within her. God is purifying her thoughts, her expectations, her declarations. She becomes mindful of what she speaks over herself. She begins to prophesy over her life, to speak life over dead places. Her words shift from fear to faith, from doubt to destiny. This is not behavior modification. This is spiritual transformation. The purification of her environment also touches her dreams. God begins to awaken desires she buried long ago. He reminds her of promises she thought had expired. But this time she sees them through the lens of maturity. She no longer chases dreams for validation. She pursues them out of obedience. Her motives have been refined. Her ambition has been sanctified. She's not trying to prove anything. She's simply walking out what heaven has written over her life. And in this new environment, her dreams begin to breathe again. They are no longer clouded by distractions or delayed by wrong alignments. They begin to move with clarity and conviction. God also purifies her atmosphere by increasing her spiritual sensitivity. She begins to sense things before they happen. She can discern the spiritual temperature of a room. She walks into places and knows what spirit is present. This isn't paranoia, it's prophetic discernment. God is entrusting her with insight because her heart has been postured correctly. She no longer uses discernment to gossip or judge. She uses it to intercede and protect. Her presence becomes a spiritual thermostat. She carries peace wherever she goes. People notice the shift even if they don't understand it. Some will distance themselves, others will draw near, but all will recognize the hand of God on her life. The purification of her environment is a sign that she is being set apart, not for show, but for service. God is making her a vessel that can carry his glory without compromise. He is stripping away everything that would contaminate the anointing. He is separating her from distractions so he can launch her into destiny. And though the process is uncomfortable, she begins to embrace it as sacred. She doesn't rush it, she honors it because deep within she knows that what's being removed can't compare to what's about to be revealed. The environment may look emptier, but her spirit feels fuller. And that fullness is the fragrance of obedience. It is the aroma of preparation. It is the sound of heaven drawing near. There is a moment in the life of a woman where everything around her may still look the same, yet within her, there is a calm certainty that something is shifting in her favor. It's not a peace that comes from everything making sense. It's not the kind of joy that depends on circumstances being ideal. It's deeper than that. It's a quiet, steady assurance that lives beneath the surface, untouched by chaos. This is not the result of positive thinking or emotional numbness. This is the kind of peace that passes all understanding, the kind of joy that comes from knowing she is being held by something greater than her own strength. This peace is prophetic. It speaks before the manifestation. It tells her that what God has spoken is already done in the spirit. Her soul begins to settle, not because the road ahead is clear, but because her trust has deepened in the one who guides her steps. Before the blessing arrives in the natural, it often reveals itself in the spiritual. And God, in his wisdom and gentleness, allows her to taste the fruit of joy before she ever sees the harvest. It's as if he places a divine marker in her soul to let her know that heaven is already in motion. She may not have the answers, but she feels held. She may not have the map, but she feels directed. That internal stillness is not her doing, it's a gift. A sign that the atmosphere around her has shifted. She is no longer living in reaction to her surroundings. She is living in response to divine assurance. This shift does not always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in a sigh of relief, in laughter that returns without explanation. In a sense of anticipation that replaces anxiety, she wakes up and senses beauty in places that once felt barren. She walks through familiar spaces with a renewed lens. Nothing changed, yet everything feels different because she is different. This kind of peace and joy is evidence of spiritual alignment. It's what happens when a woman has released control and embraced surrender. When she has let go of the timeline she once clung to. When she no longer measures her life by comparison, when she realizes that peace is not found in outcomes but in presence. God's presence begins to fill the spaces where fear used to live. His joy begins to take root where sorrow once resided. And though she may not be able to explain it to others, her spirit knows that something holy is taking place. Her laughter carries authority now. Her smile is no longer performance, it's power. The joy she feels is not shallow or fleeting. It is the fruit of deep trust. There's something sacred about a woman who carries prophetic peace. She becomes unshakable, not because life stopped being hard, but because she stopped trying to fight battles that don't belong to her. She has seen God move too many times to doubt him now. The tears she once cried have watered the soul of her faith. The silence she endured has taught her to listen differently. She no longer panics when things don't go as planned. She recognizes delay as divine orchestration. She sees interruptions as redirections. She walks into rooms and carries an atmosphere of rest. People don't always know what it is, but they feel it. That's what happens when heaven settles in a woman's spirit. Her presence becomes a reflection of her posture. She has traded striving for stillness. She has exchanged fear for faith. And now her peace becomes contagious. This prophetic joy doesn't mean she's unaware of what's happening around her. She still sees the challenges. She still feels the weight of waiting. But now she sees through it. She knows that what's happening in the natural is not the full story. She understands that joy is a weapon. That peace is a declaration. Every time she chooses to rejoice in the middle of uncertainty, she is declaring that the enemy has lost. Every time she chooses to worship instead of worry, she is shaking the atmosphere. Her peace becomes prophetic warfare. Her joy becomes a sign that she trusts the outcome even when she can't trace the steps. God is not asking her to figure it out. He's asking her to believe that He already has. In this space of prophetic peace, she becomes more present. She starts to enjoy moments she used to rush through. She listens to her own heartbeat. She pays attention to small blessings. Gratitude becomes her language. She no longer sees waiting as punishment, but as preparation. The time between the promise and the fulfillment becomes sacred to her. It's no longer about arriving somewhere. It's about becoming someone. She begins to understand that the blessing is not just what God gives her, but who she becomes while waiting for it. And that realization bursts even more peace. She no longer resists the process because she sees its purpose. The joy that once felt out of reach now becomes her daily portion. It's not loud or boastful. It's quiet, rich, and unwavering. This inner atmosphere begins to affect everything she touches. Her decisions become rooted in wisdom, not reaction. Her conversations become life-giving. She no longer needs to explain herself because peace has become her defense. She no longer fears missing out because she trusts divine timing. Her heart is no longer divided. She is fully present with God, and that alignment brings clarity. She can discern the right doors, recognize the wrong voices, and feel the shift in seasons. Her spiritual sensitivity increases not out of striving, but because peace clears the clutter. She's no longer clouded by fear. She's led by the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. In this freedom, she starts to dream again. But this time, her dreams are not rooted in lack or desperation. They are rooted in purpose. She begins to envision her future, not because she's dissatisfied with her present, but because she's been given new sight. God begins to deposit visions, ideas, and plans into her spirit. And because her heart is at rest, she receives them without fear. She no longer doubts if she's qualified. She no longer questions if she's too late. Her joy becomes fuel. Her peace becomes her pace. She no longer rushes or delays. She moves in rhythm with heaven. And that rhythm is where the blessing flows. This prophetic peace also gives her boldness. She speaks with authority, not because she's loud, but because she's anchored. She shows up with grace because she's not performing. She's secure. Her yes carries weight. Her no is not guilt-ridden. Her boundaries are clear. Her love is deep. She becomes a woman who governs her life with wisdom, who builds with discernment, who moves with purpose. And all of it flows from that well of joy and peace within her. This is not the kind of joy that comes and goes with the weather. This is joy that has been forged in the fire. This is peace that has been birthed in the storm. It is the divine signature of a woman who knows her God, a woman who is aligned with heaven's agenda, a woman who has been marked for more, a woman who is ready not just for the blessing, but for the weight of what it carries.